Birds. That's the Nothing Personal Word of the Day for Thursday, December 11th, 2025. Birds. Orioles. When you've got money in your pocket and you're out there negotiating during an offseason, the winter meetings are on, you're feeling all excited. The owner told you, let's sign one of the premium free agents. Let's get a 33-year-old designated hitter. Let's call him up. Let's offer him 5 years, $150 million. Let's take him from the Phillies. We're going to get Kyle Schwarber, and we're going to put him in the lineup. He's going to lead our young players. So good in the clubhouse. Number one personality guy. Slot him in the middle of the lineup. Yeah, he'll be 37 by the end, but this is going to be a difference maker. Oh, man. He went back to the Phillies for the same 5 years, 150. All right. Let's sign Pete Alonso. Do you think it works that way? Do you think that a team pivots that quickly? Remember last year what the Yankees did when Juan Soto signed with the Mets and they announced the Max Fried deal, the Paul Goldschmidt trade, and the Devin Williams deal in a matter of, I'm going to say it was seconds, but let's pretend it was days. The Orioles weren't even trying to fool you. And Scott Boras and Pete Alonso don't care. They had one goal. Do not allow what happened last year to happen again. So Scott Boras has his clients, and he has unrealistic expectations for them at all times. Once in a while, a team will give in because Boras will be able to weave a tale of competing for a World Series championship, the piece that you've been dreaming about and looking for. Last year, Pete Alonso found nothing in the market to his liking and signed back with the Mets on a short-term deal with an opt-out because that's all the Mets were willing to do. Pete Alonso opts out, becomes a free agent. Again, Scott Boras is out there saying, hey, Kyle Schwarber, he's a DH. My guy will play first base. He ain't good, but he'll play first base. He'll play every day. For all the teams that did not get Kyle Schwarber, the Orioles, the Reds, you pick up the phone as soon as Schwarber goes back to the Phillies, and you say, excuse me, I've got Pete Alonso right now. And it's the same amount, almost. It's a little tiny bit more, and you get someone who plays the field, and you get someone who is younger than Schwarber. He may not have hit 56 home runs last year, but he is consistent. The Cincinnati Reds say, that was special money. He grew up 30 miles from us. Don't be ridiculous. Forget about it. The New York Mets say to him, 5 years? No chance, toilet pants. We're not giving 5 years to Pete Alonso. We've lived with the guy. We know him better than anybody. There's no way anyone's giving him 5 years, just like you thought last year no one was going to give him 5 years, and no one did. We told you that, so you came back to us for 3 years. Forget it. Calls up David Rubenstein and says, you guys got to do something. Look at what's going on with the Blue Jays. Look what's going on with the Red Sox. The Yankees are going to be the Yankees. For crying out loud, the Tampa Bay Rays got Steven Matz. You better do something. It's pretty great that you got Helsley. Pretty great that you got Taylor Ward, but you need a showstopper. You need a front page, top of the fold headline in Baltimore to get everyone excited. And believe me, Scott Boras comes up with financials for you. This guy will drive ticket sales. This guy will drive corporate sales, signage. It's all poppycock. He doesn't know anything about a company or a team of any kind, but he'll give you that argument. And the Baltimore Orioles said, you know what? We were going to spend 5 years, 150 on Schwarber. We're in. 5 years, 155. Pete Alonso, come on down. Scott Boras was so happy he was whistling Dixie out of his tuchus. Calls up Alonso and says, I told you so, buddy. I am the number one agent. I told you to get your 5 years. It took an extra year, but you did it. We did it. Let's do a press conference. I'm going to sit there right next to Elias, right next to Rubenstein, right next to you. I'll be right there up on the front table, and we're going to tell the entire media, which really, wink, wink, is me telling all baseball players that they should leave their agents and come work for me because I'll get it done Chapman style. That's Matt Chapman, not Aroldis. Yeah, it's true. Pete Alonso left the Mets. Yeah, Mets fans are losing their minds. Why? Did you think as Mets fans that they were going to go 5 years? You knew, why didn't they go 5 years last year when he was 30 if they were going to go 5 years? They simply weren't going to do it. David Stearns would rather take the $400 million in payroll and make sure it's not being wasted. I grant you, the Mets have not had success. They went to the LCS, not too shabby. Last year, they didn't make the playoffs. I grant you that you're feeling sad that Edwin Diaz is a Dodger, that Brandon Nimmo was traded, and now Pete Alonso is an Oriole. You're feeling to yourself and saying to yourself, how can we possibly be good enough? Stephen Cohn, the owner, who loves to pull out the tweetsters whenever things are either going great or badly so he can reassure his fans the way he turns in bed and calls to the other room and says to his wife, Alex, I promise you everything's fine. He gets John Heyman. He gets John Heyman, and he tells him, I totally understand the fans' reaction. There is lots of offseason left to put a playoff team on the field. Steve Cohn doesn't realize, but his PR person could not have given him that statement. Because as you know, that no one can put a playoff team on the field during the offseason. The playoff team is what you put on the field once the season starts, but then what you do as the season progresses, what performance the players get, what injuries the team will sustain, what your ability is to add at the deadline and then add correctly at the deadline. Then you can talk that you've put a playoff team on the field. But for whatever reason, the Mets have decided that their line, what they want David Stearns to say, what Steve Cohn is saying, is that it's early in the offseason and you're going to be very pleased once spring training starts in just 2 months. I would not at all be saying that, because guess who reads that? Yes, it's true. Scott Boras will read that, and he will call Steve Cohn and say, listen, Pete Alonso, my guy, went to the Orioles because you wouldn't go 5 years. But I'll tell you right now, what about my man, the Bregmanator? What about a new pitcher, Imai? What about Tucker? That's what you got to do. Bring in Kyle Tucker. People forget about Pete Alonso so fast, your head will spin off like The Exorcist. And Steve Cohn's, oh, you think? Can we bring in Tucker? Is that the guy, David Stearns? Should we give him 8 years and $450 million? I'm absolutely loving the leverage that Scott Boras creates for himself by bringing a client into a division and then making sure that, you know who Scott Boras is? It just occurred to me. He's the guy who runs the Sneetch Starbelly machine in the Dr. Seuss book, who convinces the Sneetches that if they have a star in their belly, that they should have it removed. And then once it's removed, convince that same Sneetch they should have it put back. And once it's put back, convince that same Sneetch to get rid of it. And the Sneetches go in and out of the machine, removing the stars upon their bellies. I've got a tattoo of a star-bellied Sneetch and a Sneetch without a star on my side, on my ribs, to indicate that do not allow other people to tell you what you need or what you should look like, because we're all the same at the end of the day. And the people who win in that case are the owners of the machine. Scott Boras is going to be smart, and I will give him his roses. He manipulates owners in a way that I would like to believe owners, especially newer owners, would not allow themselves to be manipulated. But then I remember it's about emotion. It's about ego. And when it's about emotion and ego, do you know what is gone? Rational thinking. The only reason I can talk about this in a way that other shows can't and other members of the media can't is that I experienced it firsthand. The irrational thought process that comes with trying to pad my ego, help a team with a big name so I can sit at a press conference announcing, yes, we've added a player who you're going to love, and then the game starts, and then you stink, and the player gets hurt, you're overpaid, and then you're screwed, and then you don't do a press conference other than one to say, excuse me, can you help me with my resume? The Orioles fired Brandon Hyde last year, someone who worked with me closely for years, and they replaced him with Craig Albernaz. The Orioles were last in the AL East. Remember, they're in a division where Toronto's in that division, who went to the World Series, almost beat the Dodgers. They got the Yankees, they got the Red Sox, they got the Rays. What will this mean to the Orioles? And the answer is the incremental improvement that Pete Alonso brings to the Orioles will not matter if the core of their young hitters, including, most importantly, Gunnar, Holiday, etc., if they do not improve over last year's results, Pete Alonso himself cannot carry the Orioles to the playoffs. Hold on. Am I wrong about that? Nope. Last year, Pete Alonso had a great year, we were told. And what were the Mets doing in October? The same thing you were all doing in the live with Nothing Personal with David Samson live chat. We were all doing the same thing in October. Well, this past October was a little different for me, but many of us were doing the same thing, which is staring at a screen saying, wow, that doesn't look like a Mets uniform. The Orioles should be thinking one thing about Pete Alonso and one thing only, and I know when you are an executive, you really try not to have the syndrome where you are concerned that a mistake you've made in the past will inform mistakes you make in the future. As a matter of fact, you try to be the other way. You try to say, well, when I signed Chris Davis as a free agent and gave him all those years and all that money, like 161 with all sorts of deferrals, I completely evaluated players differently. It was a different organization, different front office. I wasn't even the owner back then, so I'm never going to do what happened with Chris Davis. But there is some sort of PTSD for Orioles fans. I would assume there'd have to be. The last deal of this size was Chris Davis. Side note, you're still paying Chris Davis. And he was terrible. Pete Alonso is a Baltimore Oriole. Indeed he is. Don Mattingly was our manager starting in 2014, maybe? 13? No, 2013, 14, 15? Maybe 2015. So the last 3 years of my career, he was our manager. And there was one of his sons was in the clubhouse who I got to know, and his name was Preston Mattingly, just a good baseball guy, who has since worked his way up to be the GM of the Philadelphia Phillies, working under Dave Dombrowski, the president of baseball operations. I couldn't be happier for Preston, for the whole Mattingly family. Don Mattingly, as you may recall, was the bench coach for Schneider in Toronto, went to his first World Series this year, was trying for his first ring, and the Blue Jays obviously lost to the Dodgers. Something I read recently that Don Mattingly may become the bench coach of the Phillies. Amazing. They extended their manager, Rob Thompson, through the 2027 season. You bring in Don Mattingly as a bench coach, just a brilliant, perfect manager. You assume he'll get along with the front office because his son is the GM in the front office. You just feel good about what the Phillies are doing. But then, sorry, Don and Preston, but you know what we do on Nothing Personal. It is nothing personal. But Preston was asked a question and during the winter meetings and gave an answer that I think they ought to workshop when they are thinking about how they are going to operate their team. And Preston Mattingly, the GM of the Phillies, said that Dave Dombrowski, the president of baseball ops, had spoken to one of their core players over the years, a really popular player, Nick Castellanos. That's a name that you may remember if you're a Tom Brenneman fan. That's a name you may remember if you're looking for clutch home runs, if you're looking for tar on the face to protect against glare. Whatever it is that you're looking for, he's a positive player who is now past his prime, and he's not the Chris Paul level because he never was that good, but just picture a player who is good, still matters, but just can't get the job done the way he used to. Well, apparently, Dave Dombrowski of the Phillies has had a conversation, according to Preston Mattingly, with Nick Castellanos about helping him to get a change of scenery. They are trying to trade Nick. They are trying to move him to another team. The problem with going public, that you are trying to get a player traded, is that the player takes that information. There's two sides to it. The conversation that happens privately and one that happens publicly. When we've spoken to a player about releasing the player, trading the player, just moving on from the player, we're going to do it privately because we have the respect for the player. We don't do it to every player. But if there is a player who we respect, who we want to communicate with, we're going to pull him aside. If it's off season, we're going to call him, maybe even go see him in certain circumstances and say, listen, you're not going to be on this roster come spring training. We're trying to trade you, but if we feel like we can get value or someone's going to take on your contract, we're going to make the deal. Do you have any teams that you really don't want to go to, teams that you do want to go to? We'll do our best, though we can't promise it. But the reason why we're not going to publicly talk about it till it's done is we can't allow other teams that leverage. If another team knows that the Phillies are getting rid of Castellanos, why would you give anything in return? You wouldn't give a prospect. You wouldn't give a close to the big leagues position player or starter, because if you know you're moving on from a player and another team knows you're moving on, that means eventually if you can't trade him, you're going to designate him. You're going to release him. And then we can sign him without any compensation in return. So strategically speaking, Preston Mattingly, when asked by the media, should simply say, we are so lucky to have played with and to continue to have Nick Castellanos on our team. Who knows what tomorrow brings or what the final roster makeup will be? It's only December winter meetings. We've got months of work that we're doing as an organization to put together the best team that we can to finally bring another World Series to the great fans we have in Philadelphia. That's it. Just leave it at that. It's so easy for people when they're newly dealing with the media, or for people who are new GMs, or for teams trying to come out looking good, like, hey, we're a front office, we care. It's like the Clippers coming out in their statement and saying, we are going to work with CP and his representatives to get him to a new team. Yeah, I'm sure that's what the Clippers are doing. They are spending every waking moment trying to figure out how to trade or what to do with Chris Paul. Give me a small break, would you? The Phillies got a lot of fish to fry. You want to make a player available like a Nick Castellanos? He's been available for a year. You think only this offseason the Phillies in trade talks and every time they spoke to another team didn't say, by the way, if you wanted to talk about Nick, we'd be willing to talk about him. Whenever, side note, Coca, whenever a front office team president would call me up and say, you know, we'd be willing to talk about player X, I was like, really? That's amazing information. Thank you so much. Because when a president says it to another president, it means it's done. It means they are done with that player if they're willing to talk about that player. So that's not a helpful strategy either. Other GMs don't go into meetings with Philly and the Phillies brass and say, what do you got on Nick? So you've got to respond with a counter offer that includes the player you want to get rid of in order to make it not seem desperate. So if you're offered player X, then you say, all right, I would think about that, and here's the players we'd give back. And you don't include Nick's name in the first round. This is like negotiating 101. Then the other team says, no, that trade doesn't work for me. And then you go back and say, well, we'd be willing then maybe if you add like a low A ball non-prospect. We'll talk about Nick. We'll talk about Castellanos. And then all of a sudden you figure out how a trade can work and how you figure out money and all various things. But you really do not ever want to give any leverage away that you possibly have. And owners are terrible at this because they just talk so much. And you count on your GM and your president of baseball ops to be way more strategic. The other thing is, don't believe any time a front office or a player or an agent where it comes out, this player is allowed to seek a trading partner for himself. I like when people do that. I like when media and fans are like, oh, that's so amazing. Like this agent must be doing trade talks with GMs. It doesn't work that way. When you say to a player, hey, listen, go ahead, find a team who will take you. They're not like calling the team in Osaka. They're calling the other 29 teams in baseball, the agents are, just in a matter of diligence by the agent. But we've already spoken to the 29 teams. We know that nobody wants your guy. What, all of a sudden, you're going to call, you're going to find a team that we didn't think about? Oh, did you forget to call the Tampa Rays? Because we called them and they'd like the player. Really? We just spoke to them. They'll take the player, but only if we pay the whole salary. What? It's like players and agents think that we're not making the calls and we're not keeping track on a spreadsheet of where every team is with a player who we're, quote, trying to give a change of scenery to, or a player who is a problem in the clubhouse, or a player who's making too much money and not worth it. We're on it. But I'm glad that there's a change of scenery coming for you, Nick. May it work out in your favor. Skinny bundle. Is that your favorite expression about what media companies are doing to you now? There used to be, what's the opposite of skinny? I guess fat, grotesquely overweight. Describing channels that you're paying for that you don't want. Does that sound like cable? Cable's bundle was grotesquely overweight. You had hundreds of channels of which you watched tens of channels and that's it. And they even acknowledge it when they let you set up your favorites on cable. So you can have, it's like on Sirius XM when you have just your favorites. And you're like, but you're paying for every channel. But yeah, I only listen to 80s on 8, First Wave, 70s on 7, East Street Radio, Classic Rewind, The Bridge. God, I love The Bridge. That's the old school David, where I love all the songs on The Bridge, which is like yacht rock, which I love too, and that's a station during a certain time of year. But little calm music. But I say, yeah, I like Classic Rewind. I like the metal bands of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's what cable was. It was Sirius XM. It was hundreds of channels. It was grotesquely overweight. So then everyone said, here's an idea. Let's have different tiers where you can decide how fat you want to get. And we're going to call those tiers skinny tiers. Skinny tiers meaning that you get to choose. But it's not a la carte. That didn't exist back in the day. It's just you get a sports tier. You get a movie channel. Skinny, skinny, skinny. Then it realized, well, let's try to make this a little fatter, but still call it skinny. YouTube yesterday announcing that they are giving their clients the opportunity to get a skinny bundle made a ton of news. It was great, except the cable companies have been offering the skinny bundles. Skinny bundles are everywhere. That's why I was asking if you love the word skinny bundle. I love the concept. Like, it's such a Disney World, Made in America type of thing, where you'd have a skinny bundle and then the people who need the wheelchairs in Disney motorized who actually can walk fine, except they weigh 450 pounds. So they take all the wheelchairs, and then you got to watch your feet get run over while you're trying to get your kids to the front of the line because of the fast pass that you overpaid for, because otherwise you take 4 rides in one day. Sorry. That was a little thing from back when my kids were younger. So let's talk about this YouTube skinny bundle. They're calling it the YouTube TV Sports Plan. Sports is a great thing for a skinny bundle, because why would you want the Food Network when you want to make sure you're getting all of your live events? You want to make sure you're getting NBC Sports Network and FS1 and ESPN, all the ESPN networks except not ESPN3, because that went bye-bye. We want to make sure that our YouTube TV clients understand that we have optionality for them. Right now, you pay more than $80 a month for a base plan, but there's a bunch of networks you don't get, or a bunch of networks that you do get that you don't want. But here is the new plan for you YouTube TV people. Except I'm sorry, Coca. This new YouTube skinny bundle is not for you. This new YouTube skinny bundle is for people who don't have YouTube TV. The opportunity to get the skinny bundle as a standalone, to go with NFL's The Ticket, to go with whatever other streaming networks you require to watch whatever it is you watch, like the NBA Cup games exclusive on Amazon last night. This is a way to drive numbers for YouTube TV. When we have a conversation, discussion about YouTube and Google and the fights, the carriage disputes, which you may recall, the big carriage dispute with Disney that settled after a couple of weeks, you may recall that part of settlement is when there is conversations about what stations can be bundled where, what streaming platforms like Disney Plus and Hulu, what can get offered to clients, how that's all going to work. That's what they're negotiating more than what the per sub price is. And we've talked about this on the sporting class. And my guess is next week, if we have a sporting class, we'll talk about something like this again. But I don't want you as a audience, or you as a listener, if you're listening to this, thank you. If you're watching it, hit the subscribe button. If you're on DraftKings Network, thank you for supporting DraftKings, who supports me and my family and Coca and Jack with love. Thank you for that. But you do understand that the consumer, you, the audience, when YouTube TV does a release like this about its skinny bundle, it's not really about you. This is not in any way going to help you curb your expenses, lower your monthly nut. It's really about the PR of saying that we offer sports, the lifeblood of business these days, that we are offering sports to our family and to our friends who do not yet engage with our product. And sports has proven way more than any other network or bundle of networks. Sports has proven to be the needle mover for these companies. It's an amazing thing. It's why sports business is such a thing. It's why Nothing Personal is able to be Nothing Personal, and why the sporting class is able to be the sporting class, because sports business has become an entity, a business silo that people can't get enough of. So what do? You bring people in and you just give them the skinny bundle. You going to do it? Do you need to do it? We're going to find out. Coca, let's do a review, please. Today is Thursday. We are down to today and 2 more weeks. By the end of the year, we are going to have reviewed every movie in the top 100 list of movies. My top 100. We've spent 100 weeks doing this. Well, 98 weeks, because we have 2 left. This is the 97th week, 98th week. 2 movies left. How great is that? After I'm done reviewing, and you can find it at davidsamsonpodcast.com, there's a link right to a tracking document which shows all of our wait to sees and our picks of the day and words of the day. It also has a tab for the top 100 movie list that I carry around with me digitally. I used to carry it around literally printed. Now it's on my phone. I'm going to redo my top 100 list once I've reviewed for you every movie in there. Today, it is movie number 85. It's called Begin Again. I love Adam Levine. I'm sorry, I do. I love Keira Knightley. I love James Corden in this movie. I love Mark Ruffalo in this movie. I love Catherine Keener in any movie. She's the only one in that group, although Mark Ruffalo has a hard time making a bad movie, no matter what you think of his politics. Doesn't matter. Does he make movies that entertain you? There's a scene in Begin Again I want to draw your attention to. It's not a spoiler alert because the movie is older, but if you watch it again, watch for the scene where Mark Ruffalo and Keira Knightley are walking through the city listening to music on their iPhones, getting each other to understand and know the language of music love that they feel and have. It is not shot in a studio. It is on the streets of New York, likely in the middle of the night, and it will make you feel something. That is where I stand with movies, that I love feeling something, and Begin Again gives me all of those feelings. The opening scene, when he creates and hears music that's not there, there's just no part of this movie that you will not like, period. It's called Begin Again. All right, Coca, we only got 2 left, so it should be easy to choose randomly. Oh, Jackie Brown. How is Jackie Brown number 26? I had not seen Jackie Brown for the first time until a couple of years ago. All right, although it could have been pre-COVID, or it may have been during COVID, something like that. I'll watch it again. I've only watched Jackie Brown one time, and I always rank it among the best Quentin Tarantino movies I've ever seen because it's unreal, notwithstanding the fact that I love Ruby Sparks and The Girl Next Door and There Will Be Blood. You don't have to agree with everything someone says, and you don't have to have a disagreement with someone and all of a sudden hate everything they do. I don't agree with Quentin Tarantino that Paul Dano is not a good actor. Doesn't mean I'm not going to love Quentin Tarantino movies, and I'm going to keep loving Paul Dano movies. All right, no show tomorrow, Monday. I'm going this weekend to watch Begonia with Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone. I will review that Monday. That is my plan to see Begonia. We will wait to see, but that is what I expect to be reviewing on Monday. Yesterday, we had a good show. I enjoy. Actually, I have no idea whether it was a good show. It seemed like a good show. I think you enjoyed it, where we did So You Want to Talk to Samson in our second hour. We do that on Wednesdays. I love hearing your voices. Please call again. Next Wednesday, we're going to do it again. There's a phone number we have, and it's called So You Want to Talk to Samson, which means I'll answer your questions. Make it relevant. Make it short. Make it interesting. 631-377-4869. Just pick up the phone. I think I have to say I got in trouble with our lawyers. Charges may apply. I love that. Is anyone still paying on a per-call basis or a per-minute basis? Can't you find a way to get unlimited minutes, for crying out loud? I think the demographic of the audience of Nothing Personal, I don't think there's one person listening to this who's paying for a cell phone call by the minute. I will go on record as saying that. That said, 631-377-4869. Nothing Personal Pick of the Day. Nothing Personal Pick of the Day is presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. We've got a weekend coming up that starts with Week 15 in the NFL with Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are holding on for dear life under the reinvigorated Baker Mayfield. But 4.5 points, DraftKings, is that still official? This looks like a field goal game to me. I thought I'd have to really be worried about 3 points or 2.5. We're taking the Falcons plus 4.5 versus the Buccaneers on Thursday night. Saturday is the semifinals in Las Vegas of the NBA Emirates Cup, exclusively on Amazon. The New York Knicks are taking on the Orlando Magic, and the Golden 4869 and the Oklahoma City Thunder are taking on the San Antonio Spurs. We're going to take the New York Knicks to make it to the finals and get themselves in a position to make an extra $500,000 for each of them if they win the NBA Cup. Having watched the Knicks dismantle the Raptors, having watched the Magic come back to beat the Heat, if they can find a way to control Mr. Bane of the Magic, I believe the Knicks will have no problem covering the 4.5 point spread. Sunday, we've got a slate of football that will put tears in your eyes that Matthew Coca and I will talk about later on in today's show. The game I'll be watching involves my Green Bay Packers. The problem is they're playing the Broncos in Denver, and the Broncos are underdogs at home. The Broncos, with the best record in the AFC, are underdogs to the Green Bay Packers at home. That is TGTBT. When something's TGTBT, we're going to pounce. Broncos plus 2.5 versus the Packers. So the nothing personal pick of the day, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Falcons plus 4.5 on Thursday. Knicks minus 4.5 on Saturday. And Broncos plus 2.5 on Sunday. Last night stunk. How do the Lakers, who are trying to be good, have Luka, LJ, and Reeves as their big three? Wemby not playing for the Spurs. They're given 5.5 points. It's quarterfinals with a chance, LeBron, to go to Vegas, which is where you want to buy a team. You can go there and do business if you don't want to be doing the business during the couple days you'd be there. How could the Lakers drop such an absolute turd game? Brings me back to 149 and 152 as the Lakers did not cover against the Spurs, thereby sending the Spurs to the city of never sleeping. Coca, help me out here before we talk about Travis Kelce. Is Las Vegas the city of light or the city of angels? I think that's Los Angeles. Is Vegas known as the city? What is it? Sin City. I think that's old. I don't know if Las Vegas is still called that. It used to be like the family. Remember when they did that? That marketing was what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, or Vegas is a family-friendly place. They tried to get kids to come to Vegas and then realized that all the Spider-Men on the streets stripping may not be perfect family fare. They weren't exactly throwing Disney out of business. Anyway, I thought LeBron would want to go to Vegas. I guess not. Travis Kelce's finished. So are the Chiefs. I didn't think yeah, I knew it. I had to wait to see that's on that document on davidsamsonpodcast.com that Travis Kelce was going to retire after they'd won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Then he came back because once he started dating Taylor Swift, I figured Taylor would say, listen, I'm not looking to take care of a guy with CTE. I really have zero interest in going to football games. I'm tired of pretending I do. You've made plenty of money. I will arrange in our prenup, if we ever get married, that you will have enough money for the rest of your life. Don't worry about it, Travis. But it's enough. Like, all you do is work out, and then you get hit in the head, and then you come home, and you think I'm Selena. Well, the time's come. Travis, on his Golden Globe nominated podcast. Am I the only one who was shocked not to see Pablo Torre finds out nominated for a Golden Globes? What kind of awards budget do we have that we couldn't get Pablo Torre a Golden Globe nomination? And if we're going to go all in on the ego patting, why wouldn't we extend it to the Golden Globes? It turns out that we need to do some work with the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. I think Meadowlark should try to get at least 2 of its shows nominated for a Golden Globe next year. Seriously. I mean, forget Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro. How could it not be Pablo? And nothing personal. It's almost insane. But Travis Kelce was nominated. Good episode with his fiancee, Taylor Swift. I think it broke the internet. There were about 10 billion people listening at the same time. Well, if you're going to give news, you don't give it after a game. You don't have to be Justin Herbert and be rude about it, but you do not, in a post-game interview, in a post-game media availability, under no circumstances do you give news when you can give the news yourself on your platform, on your podcast. Travis Kelce, in yesterday's episode, basically was telling you how sad he is that the Chiefs are going to miss the playoffs for the first time since 2014. How sad he is that he has not been able to perform the way he's used to performing. Remember, in his game last week, he just kept dropping balls and was barely targeted. It just was embarrassing. At one point, I can't say for sure, but it seemed like Taylor Swift was looking away instead of looking at the train wreck that is Travis Kelce. Acknowledging as an old player that you're no longer good is really impossible for the all-time greats. For the good players and the never really good players, they are much more readily able to admit that they're not able to perform anymore. And so many players, and we could do a list for you, but there's no chance that we have time when we haven't even gotten to FIFA yet. But players disappear from leagues all the time. If you look at opening day rosters from last year and then opening day rosters from this year in Major League Baseball, there'll be 50 players that aren't on a roster that just have disappeared. They didn't have a retirement ceremony. They didn't do jersey exchanges. They're not getting a rocking chair. They're not getting their number retired. They're just out of the sport. Just like that. Full Kaiser Soze. And you don't even know. Travis Kelce is not one of those players. I would have fully expected Travis Kelce to not come back next year because Travis Kelce is an embarrassment to young Travis Kelce. The Kansas City Chiefs are loyal to Travis Kelce but cannot give him a roster spot next year. You've got to get a different tight end in the on the roster who can possibly be an offensive threat and not all thumbs and have your legs working in neutral, if not reverse. So it's clear as day from a football standpoint, Travis Kelce should not be on the Chiefs next year. As a front office and at the end of a dynasty, what you pray is that your older players will have the wherewithal, will have the ability to subjugate their ego enough to know when it's time to hang them up. Because when you've got to get rid of a veteran, a trusted, great Hall of Fame player, it stinks. You would much rather the player come to you and say, I'm done, thank you, love you, sign me out. When Travis Kelce took the microphone to say that, hey, I got to tell you, I don't know what I got going here, but it certainly feels like this year is it. Well, we'll wait and see, but a Kansas City Chiefs team that's 6-7, basically out of the playoffs. They're not mathematically eliminated, but they might as well be. Andy Reid hasn't missed the playoffs since his second year with the team way back in 2014 when our main man, Patrick Mahomes, was still a freshman at Texas Tech, by the way. That's the last time the Chiefs missed the playoffs. Jets fans, cover your ears. Giants fans, sort of cover your ears. It is a guarantee that this will be Kelce's last year and that they will allow him to announce it the way he wants to on his terms, on his podcast, and be totally fine with it. It almost feels like cheating to give you this wait to see. But wait to see when we tell you something's going to happen. If it does, great. If it doesn't, fine. We will revisit it. Wait to see. Travis Kelce's last year in the NFL is 2025. Wait to see. I've talked about many times FIFA, my view of FIFA, the fact that it is the single most corrupt organization in business in sports. And I don't say that lightly. When I watched FIFA and Gianni Infantino present the Peace Prize to Donald Trump, first ever Peace Prize, without going through whatever protocols you would do before retiring somebody's number, before giving someone the first Peace Prize of what could or could not be an annual honor bestowed upon someone, you have to think to yourself, why? What's going on here? What would be the reason? Well, would it shock you to know that the Justice Department that is controlled by Donald Trump asked just yesterday to dismiss a long-standing case against two defendants who had been convicted in a FIFA corruption case? You remember, if you watch Sporting Class, John Skipper testified in this. This was about the marketing arm of FIFA, a guy named Hernan Lopez, a group called the Full Play Group. You'll recall the lawsuit where the question was, are the bids fixed? Like, is FIFA doing something wrong here? And they brought John Skipper in to testify. And my view of it from the beginning was, of course the bidding's fixed. The World Cup sucking up and bringing Qatar as a host country and Saudi Arabia as a host country. They're doing it to simply enrich themselves, to line the pockets of their organization and make sure the people in charge on the board and the president make money hand over fist in a way that should be and likely is completely illegal. You think that the Department of Justice happened to wake up yesterday and say, it's in the interests of justice to drop this case? What a bunch of horse hockey. You don't find it to be a coincidence that after Trump gets the Peace Prize, that all of a sudden something ugly going on with FIFA disappears? They didn't even try to put space in between those two things. What has it been, a week since the World Cup draw? 10 days? It's like FIFA is just shoving it in your face. That's the part I can't stand. You want to be corrupt? Be quiet. You want to do something anti-consumer? Shh. You want to not care about the common man? Fine. Just there's no reason to rub our faces in it. If you want to control other branches of government, try. We're going to try to have a system where there's a balance of power between the three branches of government. But if you want to say that there is no balance and that each branch will do exactly as I say when I say it, I'm hoping that we can vote that differently going forward. But listen, if that's what the people want, give the people what they want. It's a democracy. But don't shove it in our face. And by the way, if you're Egypt and Iran and you don't want to participate in the Seattle Pride appreciation and Pride celebration, can you be more quiet about it? If you want to be a person who will not live and let live, if you want to be a country who will make being a homosexual illegal, if you want to be a part of a country that kills women and LGBTQ plus people, is there any chance that I can get you to do it quietly so that we don't have to witness the horror and terror that is you and your country? And why is it that FIFA is even going to entertain the possibility that Egypt and Iran are complaining about the Pride celebration and the Pride match in Seattle for the World Cup when they're going to match up? Why is that happening? Can't you just call Johnny Infantino quietly like the rest of the people do and figure out a way to be corrupt together? Why be public about it? We don't care. We don't want to know who you are because we already know it. We have an hour coming up with Coca right after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal for hour 2 on Thursday, December 11th, 2025. Today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Second hour of the last show of the week. Today is the last show of the week. We'll be back Monday. Second hour, last show of the week means you get to look at Matthew Coca and you get to hear whether he's grumpy, which I assume he is because he's a Mets fan. You get to hear whether he's grumpy. I assume he is because he's a Ravens fan. You get to hear whether he's grumpy because he thinks I'm old and he thinks that I'm uninformed and that he doesn't like my opinions. But I think he's going to be different than last week when he was extra grumpy. And this week, I think he's going to be in a better mood. Coca, are you there? Will you come join? Hey, you're going beige today.
Yeah, I am.
You're still representing the Mets.
Yeah, I'm not going to do what everybody thinks I'm going to do and just freak out, man. Although I can because it's tough. It's really tough when you're a Mets fan and last season was a total bust. You thought that, it would be the year that they'd be able to sort of put it together. I didn't think so, but there are definitely people out there who did. And then the offseason just starts. And you're already down, longtime Mets and Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz. And the Diaz and Alonso news hit in back-to-back days. And then you have the owner coming out and saying, hey, listen, guys, there's still some time for us to get a playoff roster put together, which is hard to believe because, who are the players who are out there, right? What are the trades that need to be made? Because there are a lot of holes in this lineup. And then you've got stories about things happening in the clubhouse. And it's just, it looks like it's just this big mess. And my question to you about this is a lot of the angst and a lot of the anger is being directed towards David Stearns. And my understanding from, doing the show with you for so long is none of these moves are being made without Steve Cohen's blessing. And he's one of those owners who has his fingers all over every decision that is being made. So is this one of those things that it's just like, well, David Stearns is in that position, right? This is what he's paid for, is to take all these bullets for Steve Cohen.
Well, yeah, that is a very important position. But I think that Steve Cohen, in the business he's in the financial business, he understands efficiency models. And it really is not efficient to give Pete Alonso 5 years. It wasn't last year when he was 30. It's not this year when he's 31. So why would you do it? Steve Cohen will spend the money. So as a Mets fan, I don't understand the problem because the money was spent last year and the team wasn't good enough. Why would you bring back the same players? I know you're emotionally attached to them because they've been a part of a team. But I thought that at the same time, Mets fans, and I'm really channeling Scott now, our friend at CBS, who loves them more than life itself, maybe more than his children, which is incredible, but beautiful as well. Does he want the same players back? The ones who make him so upset that they don't win? I would assume that you want change. You want reallocation. Steve Cohen didn't come out and say the Mets are going to have the Marlins payroll. You're going to have a $400 million payroll. So I think that, of course, as a Mets fan, you should be okay. Every year.
Yeah, but I just think it was more about like these are guys who grew up in this system. I know Edwin Diaz didn't. He was part of a trade that brought him here. But the Pete Alonso and the Brandon Nimmo, those are people that, fans have become attached to. And I listen, I understand it more than most fans, right? Like, I don't want to see a losing product and just have them run it back. And I understand, bringing back Nimmo and bringing back Alonso, you're doing that. I thought the Edwin Diaz situation was one that really confused me, especially with that report from Jeff Passan where Diaz was upset that the Mets didn't reach out to him about signing Devin Williams. Devin Williams went public. They did an interview with Devin Williams where he said he's excited to pitch the 8th inning, knowing that if Diaz comes back, Diaz can get the 9th inning. So I don't understand where Diaz is coming from, and that's why it's hard for me to believe that was the cause of Diaz not coming back. I think he just wanted to go to L.A. Like, who wouldn't? If the Dodgers called me and said, hey, we want you to come and be our closer, I'd do it too. And it wasn't like they were underpaying for Diaz. They offered him $69 million to come be the closer. So that one really confused me. But the Alonso thing, it's the same thing, right? $155 million to go be the first baseman down in Baltimore, that stuff makes sense. But now this is where the Mets need to do something, and I hope they do something because I don't really know who's left on the board who sort of fills the needs that they have. Like, is this where they're going to have to get Cody Bellinger, or are they now in a situation where they're going to have to overpay for someone like Cody Bellinger? And, that puts them in the same bucket as if they overpaid for Pete Alonso.
Do you remember when we talked about this in the first hour when the Yankees did not get Soto and everyone was so despondent? And it turns out that the Yankees with Goldschmidt and Williams and Fried were better off than with just Soto. But I have a question that now I'm thinking about it. If Joe Rogan called you today, maybe that's a bad example for political reasons, but whatever. Because in theory, Joe Rogan's the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And in theory, I'm not even the Mets. Maybe I'm the Marlins, but whatever we are, that I love working with you as per nothing personal. Are you saying that you would go to a bigger podcast if you were offered, and I hope I know the answer, so I want to hear it from you though. If you're offered more money and a bigger audience and a bigger show to be that producer, are you taking that job?
No, but I think it's different for most people, right? Like I think no.
Are you telling me that if Joe Rogan calls you and offers you $1 million a year to be his producer, you're going to say no because you love me?
Yeah, I think I think loyalty is really important. I think that's like a big thing for me is
Thank you.
I don't think it's something to cry about, but I think being loyal and having that sort of integrity is really important. And that's why, some players will take home the hometown discount. And that's what we saw with, someone like Tom Brady, right? That was always the big thing with Tom Brady, is Tom Brady's always taking less money to stay in New England and they can put a better team around him. So I think it's, it all goes by, what sort of situation you're in. You saw Jalen
sport.
Yeah, but I'm saying Jalen Brunson did it with the Knicks too, right? Jalen Brunson took less money so that they can bring his friends over and pay his friends money. So you definitely do see it. Now, listen, I don't know what the Mets offered Alonso. I don't know what would have made sense. If I was the GM, and we said it last week, like I would have been comfortable giving him that 5 years just because, they talk about his defense, whatever. He's a first baseman. I don't need a Gold Glove first baseman if his bat is in the lineup and he's hitting, 40 home runs and, bringing in over 100 RBI. Like, I think that with the DH spot being there and that being something, Ohtani essentially was a DH only last year for the Dodgers too, and they paid him all that money. I would have been comfortable with him playing first base for 2 more years and then shifting him over, to the DH spot where he'd still only be, 33 years old by the time that happens. That's not somebody who's aged out of being an all-star level bat.
So I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you right, because you forgot to mention the part that when someone's on the board, as you're calling it, that's a free agent signing you're referring to. But there's a bunch of ways to spend money in this league. There's always players available for trade. They could go out and get Skubal right now, for crying out loud, and offer Skubal $500 million as an extension that Boris would have his players sign. I think that when you're running a team, and your original question was about the relationship between David Stearns and Stephen Cohen, I think that they are in sync. I think that David Stearns knows that he's going to get the highest payroll in baseball and knows that he should be held accountable to win with that highest payroll. And even when the owner's prerogative occurs and Stephen Cohen says, hey, I want to do this, he's going to give him a win from time to time. But David Stearns also, who Steve Cohen has been after for years and years and years, so we all knew that he was getting that job at the end of the day. He says to Cohen, keep spending, man, but not like this. Do not give a 4th and 5th year, because you know how quick it went these first 5 years you own the team. 4 years from now, you don't want to pay Alonso $30+ million, but you're going to be spending it, but there's going to be someone else, another shining star, and we'll be competitive next season. We'll hopefully make the playoffs and win a World Series for you, but we will be the Dodgers. And to be the Dodgers, you have to not give out too many of these crazy long-term deals.
When you have a player like Soto, who you just gave $765 million to be, the face of the franchise for the foreseeable future, are you having a conversation with him if you're Stearns or if you're Cohen? Are you sitting him down and essentially saying, hey, this is what we have mapped out? You came here, you signed here thinking you were going to sign with a contender. We are moving all these pieces, but this is what we plan to do. Are you having that conversation, or it's not even worth it?
It wouldn't be worth it with Soto, but with other players, we would have that conversation with Stanton, where we would tell him about what we were doing with the team and why we were doing the things we were doing and the moves we were making. It's not like Juan Soto says to himself, well, they promised me that they would spend money and have money to spend after they sign me, and they haven't spent money. It's the opposite of that. I don't think Juan Soto would ever say that they signed him to his deal, and they're still spending the money that all the money that Soto could have dreamt of to surround him with his teammates. But there's a lot going on with the Mets, and this goes back to the days when I was in baseball and we were beating the Mets at the end of the season several times. And there's clubhouse problems are real. And you've done this to me too, where you downplay it. And I used to feel that way until I was in one and realized that when you've got a problem in the clubhouse, it can definitely find its way to the field. Now, there are many examples of good teams on the field, but bad relationships off the field. That happens. That's almost normal. But when it gets so toxic inside a clubhouse, it doesn't matter anything because the results on the field are going to suffer. And what you're hearing now is a lot of chirping about the Mets clubhouse, a lot of chirping about relationships. And I wonder, it's like you. I mean, you got to get along with the people you work with a little bit at least.
The last thing before we move on is, do you sense that there has to be some sort of change to deferrals and the amount of money that could be in deferrals? Because we talk about the competitive balance that there is in baseball, but now we've seen what the Dodgers have been able to do, go back-to-back with the World Series, and they just continue to add these premium players. And now there's talk about, they don't need another big splash like Kyle Tucker, but they can still sign Kyle Tucker if they want to. They have that the whole starting pitching with Blake Snell, paying him all that money, and Roki Sasaki. They didn't need to pay him all that money, but Yamamoto is getting a big deal, and they have Freddie Freeman still getting paid, and Mookie Betts still getting paid, and now they bring in Edwin Diaz, and last year was Tanner Scott. Tyler Glasnow, and a lot of it is because of what they were able to do with the deferrals and Shohei Ohtani's contract. Do you think that with this next CBA that's coming up and all this conversation about competitive balance and about salary caps and salary floors and all this, deferrals to me seem like one of the biggest issues, because if a team is able to do that, then they're able to do what the Dodgers have done. You haven't seen teams do this, but with the Dodgers, they can continue to get away with this sort of spending because of the deferrals that they have.
Yeah, teams have been doing deferrals forever. We did deferrals with our first ever player, Graham Lloyd. They were just smaller amounts of deferrals. And the Mets did it. The most famous deferral of all time is a Met, Bobby Bonilla. So deferrals have been going on forever.
Yeah, but I just want to say the price. I'm talking about the money that is being deferred. So $1 million a year spread over 20 years, sure. But with Ohtani's case, when it shows up on the tax sheet as being a $2 million deal, but
it does not. So let me explain that. So that's a great point. The Ohtani deal, no matter what the deferrals are, the union and the league have an agreed upon discount rate to value a deal, and that's the amount of money used for the luxury tax purposes. So Ohtani's deal is about $460 million over 10 years. So the Dodgers get hit with a $46 million tax amount for Ohtani's contract. Now, the cash portion is $2 million. That's true. But in terms of what their penalty is, what tax they pay to go over the luxury tax threshold, Ohtani counts as $46 million this year. So just FYI. So,
okay.
And And the CBA requires teams to fund the deferrals. So that means that when you pay Shohei Ohtani $2 million and defer $68 million for 10 years from now, the CBA requires you to take that $68 million and have it available in a segregated account that can be audited by MLB and the union. Here's the problem with that rule. Owners don't follow it. Because what you can do, and owners have this ability, when you are being checked by the union and by the league to make sure you have segregated your deferrals in a different account, all you do as a team is you go to a bank and you say, do me a favor. I need to borrow $68 million. I'm going to open an account called a deferral account. The union and Major League Baseball are going to take a picture of the balance on November 15th of 2025. Put 68 in there. On November 16th, pull it out, and we'll pay it back. You can have it back, and that's great. Next November 15th, we're going to need it back again. And so teams take the deferred money. They violate the CBA, the principle of the CBA, but not the letter of the CBA, by having the money available. And why is this a rule? Because players were concerned that owners would defer money and then go out of business, go bankrupt, and not pay the players their deferred money. But now that doesn't happen because, in theory, the deferred money is already paid into a separate account. But the reason the union doesn't even care about that is they know that no owners are going to go bankrupt. Major League Baseball will not allow a team to go bankrupt because Bud Selig and Rob Manfred have been clear. If a team goes bankrupt, then that team gets sold and MLB doesn't get to control the sale. It becomes something the courts control. Take a look at the Baltimore Orioles and how they got to Peter Angelos. Take a look at what happened with the Los Angeles Dodgers and how much work they had to do with that McCourt sale to Guggenheim Partners, and how much manipulation baseball had to do to get the sale they wanted. So the union will tell you, Coca, that no team will ever go bankrupt again, in which case the deferrals will get paid.
So Wednesday was a crazy day in college football, and I know sometimes you don't like talking college football, but this story is completely different, and it's what happened with Michigan and Sherrone Moore. For those who have missed it, Sherrone Moore, who is the head coach of the Michigan football team, was fired yesterday for cause. It's coming out that he had a relationship with a staffer, and then things just went crazy. Stories started trickling out about what their relationship was, the things that happened with their relationship. There were rumors swirling about, did he get her a raise that maybe she did not deserve and the percentage of the raise. And then it came out that he was arrested. And then once again, there were all these reports. And that's when I told you, we have to slow down. We really have to slow down because people are crazy, and I'm not talking about Sherrone Moore in this case. I'm talking about just these online stories. And especially when it comes to college football and everybody believes they're an insider and, they heard something from the mailman, they heard something from this, they saw it at the grocery store. And there were all these stories about what happened with Sherrone Moore and his arrest. And then, the police came out and their report essentially said he was picked up for an alleged assault, and we will give out more information, when the time comes. And I don't want to talk about the arrest. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Michigan and keep it with Michigan, because this is the end of the Jim Harbaugh era at Michigan. They need to completely start over. They need to get rid of everybody who was on Jim Harbaugh's staff. They need to get rid of the AD, Ward Manuel. He needs to go. He's been there since 2016, and in his tenure, all we've seen is these recruiting violations. We've seen coaches fired for cause, whether it was Juwan Howard and the basketball team, whether it was Jim Harbaugh leaving, but he probably would have been fired. Sherrone Moore was part of this mess that was Jim Harbaugh, and he was suspended to start this year. And I believe next year he still has to sit at, he would have had to have been suspended for a game next year. They just need to completely start over. And this just goes to what the culture of college sports and college athletics have always been. And it's been this wild, wild west, and it's been this madness. And all these guys do is they preach, we are here for the men. We are good men, and we're going to do right by them, and we are these great leaders. And then this happens. It's a joke.
That's okay. Thank you. Which part's the joke? The fact that he had an affair, or the fact that they've had recruiting violations, the fact that he's in protective custody for who knows what? Like, I just want to make sure, because my view of what Michigan is, and Michigan has the loudest benefactors in sports media, from Dave Portnoy to Rich Eisen. There's so many people who love Michigan, who are Michigan alums. Our lawyer, the lawyer who I've worked with since the beginning of time, in 1999 for all the baseball we've ever done, the best sports lawyer in the country from Proskauer Rose, is a Michigan guy. And they have this weird connection to their school in a way that I love Wisconsin, but don't feel about it that way. And whether you go to Yale or Northwestern, you love it. But there's something cult-like about Michigan where the view is that everyone else is wrong and they're right, that things are as they should be at Michigan, and they've taken their place rightly in the highest echelons of college athletics and academia. And I never liked Michigan as a Badger. I find the school to be not as good as Wisconsin. I find the experience, the campus, there's nothing about Michigan that I would take over Wisconsin. But of course, I'm biased because I went to Wisconsin. But it can't be a coincidence that their football program is a disaster, because from the top down, they decided that morals, ethics, and rule following was not for them. And where do they come up with that? Because that's how people act who are Michigan Wolverines. Not all of them. I love my son-in-law. Not all of them. But man, there's a whole lot of them. And so your solution I had never pondered before, which is go back to the Jim Harbaugh era, and anyone associated with it, just fire. That is a funny thing, because that's dangerous, of course, because imagine if you are the baby thrown out with the bathwater and you didn't do anything. I assume there are people under Jim Harbaugh who were good. So now what you're saying, Coke, is we have to choose the bad ones. But who's choosing that? Is it the AD? Is it the new coach, Biff? Is that really his first name in the notes that you gave me?
He's just the interim.
For what, their bowl game?
Yeah. I mean, they still need a coach right now. Like, they're not just gonna, it's not somebody needs to lead the team. They still have.
Why would they have fired more after the bowl game?
Well, because you can't in this case, right? Because there is violations, right? These are ethics violations.
But it couldn't have waited 2 weeks?
No, I think the pressure was there, because that was this, is that there were rumors about this that were widely known. Like, this wasn't some sort of secret. It wasn't like a secret relationship that was happening.
They didn't just discover it.
Yeah, but it was just directly in everybody's face. So it was something that needed to come out. The one part of this that is, a little annoying, and I guess you have to look at the timeline of when Ward Manuel and when the school found out and when they were able to find out if they were able to fire him for cause. But last week was the early signing period. Just last week. And you had all these recruits sign on to play for Michigan and sign on to play for Sherrone Moore. And now, now they're stuck. Now these players are stuck. They could have went somewhere else. They could have done whatever they wanted, gone to a different school, signed with a different school. So now it sucks for them, right? And it sucks for the players.
Do you think they came for the coach? I always thought that now in college athletics, they're signing for the money. Do they really care who the coach is anymore?
Yeah, because what if another coach comes in and he doesn't think you're worth that?
But you have a contract, in theory.
What does that mean?
Well, it's supposed to.
Georgia. Yeah, but we don't know. But we don't know what the contract is, right? You don't know if it's a 1-year deal and you have to re-up your deal every single year. I'm a West Virginia fan, right? And I follow West Virginia, and this past signing period, they brought in 49 new recruits, right? They signed
God.
40. Yeah,
How
because
many
they have
spots are
to.
there on the team?
They have to start over, right? They have to
But
start
how
over.
many,
But
how many people are on the roster?
I'm not sure. I think it
55?
was no. I think it was increased. No, college football is completely different than the NFL.
Oh, it is.
Like I think you can have like 100+ players,
Wow.
on your team.
Didn't know
But the
that.
thing is, it's like players who are there, right? We just it's essentially like, hey, you'll have your NIL money come down, you'll have your playing time come down. So yeah, you can say, hey, they came here for a contract, but this is playing time, right? They're trying to live out their dreams of playing in the NFL someday. And if you're demoted to fourth on the depth chart because a new coach comes in and doesn't want you there and you weren't one of his recruits, what are you going to do?
I've
So
got
in
the
this case with
solution for
Michigan,
you.
it's that. What?
How about if every contract, every recruit signs an Ohtani contract? The Ohtani contract, remember that if Andrew Friedman is no longer the GM, then he gets to opt out of his contract, which is so ridiculous that it made me laugh. But maybe I've never had a player ask for that. I never thought about it till Ohtani did it. Maybe that's what college players should say is I'm only signing this deal because you're giving me $1 million a year and Sherrone Moore is the coach. And if Moore is no longer the coach, I want to be a free agent again. By the way, they're totally legal. Those provisions are fine. I wonder whether college players and their agents would ask for that. I'm only pushing back because I never heard of a baseball player caring. And Ohtani caring about Andrew Friedman, it was the best negotiating leverage that Andrew Friedman could ever have, ever, as his contract was coming
up.
And
if you want to talk about tampering and seeing what tampering is, Michigan's current quarterback is this kid Bryce Underwood, and he was like the number one quarterback recruit when he came out of high school. Watch what happens with him, especially with LSU, because he was committed to go to LSU, and then he flipped and went to Michigan. Now Lane Kiffin is down at LSU. What happens with Bryce Underwood? There's going to be so much tampering going on, which, tampering never happens, but that's going to be one to really
say what you're saying. Are you telling me that you want to do a wait to see that the starting quarterback for Michigan is going to now play for LSU?
Yeah, sure. I'll put that on paper that Bryce Underwood is going to transfer to LSU. It's going to happen. I don't really know anything. No. I believe the portal opens up January 2nd. I think I read. Like the caller said, don't quote me on that, but I believe it's January 2nd is when the portal opens up. So right after that bowl game, if he plays in the bowl game, I can see a scenario where Lane Kiffin offers him, part of this big money that they've got, where Lane Kiffin offers him to bring him back to LSU. And now I don't know much about the coaches or candidates. There's been talk about, people have said, hey, Jed Fish could be somebody who's the head coach over at Washington, as a possibility. And then I saw reports that said they want to have a coach in place, a new head coach in place before the portal opens up, just to get somebody in there. But it's going to be definitely interesting to follow. And listen, I like I said, I don't know how this ends with Sherrone Moore, but I hope he gets the help. I hope he gets the help he needs.
People are. We can talk about this. I know you won't talk about this, but it was just in my head. It's a heavy reaction for cause. The cause issue, people have to understand. Maybe that's what made this acute, is they felt they had the window to do it for cause. Obviously, without cause, you can fire someone after the bowl game. You can fire them whenever you want. You just have to pay them their contract. I don't know what they owed Moore, but what they were doing is saying, hey, have an affair all you want. We're not going to be the moral center of a marriage, but just don't do it in front of our noses with someone who works for the athletic department or someone who works for the organization, and then embarrass us by potentially paying her twice as much. And so I have a thought here. And this happens. This ended Jeff Zucker's career with CNN, who, of course, he's gone on to be unbelievably successful as part of a private equity firm. But the whole thing about relationships in the office and relationships with people you work with. When you're a football coach on campus, if you are a man who has an ordinary job or a woman who's famous or ordinary, you have all this opportunity to have affairs Why would you do it with someone you work with? And the story is always the same because those are the only people we see. We're working 22 hours a day. Who else are we going to be around? That's why it makes so much sense. The problem is you are risking your career. And why would you? Because the standard, ordinary affair with someone else is just like, oh, there's a divorce or there's a lawsuit or there's embarrassment or not embarrassment or anger or whatever. But there's no issue of cause. You are not in any way subject to give up your contract. And what Moore has done, if it's true that he has slipped into this abyss, which you're not saying is accurate, or you just don't know, but what they're saying is he's in protective custody, and we don't know if it's true. They're saying he may have threatened his own life. We don't know if it's true. That he may have threatened his girlfriend. We don't know if it's true. We don't know anything. But we do know that it's now a thing. And Moore having an affair, do you think, let me run this by you. How many teams are in the FCS? Did you tell me 135?
Yeah, around there.
Okay. You're going to deny this. The over-under of coaches having affairs out of 135. The over-under is 85.
All right, I don't want to play. I don't want to play.
I know
this
you
game.
don't. But
Yeah,
Moore, this has become, is this the biggest story? Is this going to lead like all the sports shows? Stephen A. Smith, Dan's show, which is starting after our show. Do you assume that Michigan is the top story?
Probably.
That should say everything. How can why is that?
What do you mean? Why is that? They're a top 5 program in college football, and I know you hate to admit it, but college football is the number 2.
Michigan is a top 5 program.
Yes. Are you kidding me?
That's.
I mean, listen. Well,
is
yeah,
Wisconsin?
Yeah. Okay. Wisconsin's
Is
might
West
not even
Virginia?
Wisconsin might not be top 2 in Wisconsin.
Who are the top 5 college programs? Alabama. Let's see if I can name them. Alabama. Is that? Do you count that as the top 5?
Let's play the games. Name 5, and I'll you if you're wrong.
Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, Georgia, Texas. When I was younger, Nebraska was always a good one. Michigan was always good, so they're
all right. So the game's already over because you just said Michigan. They're always good, and
but I had them at number 7.
I think it's definitely interchangeable to have Michigan in there. They have the biggest stadium in college football.
Notre Dame
they have the biggest stadium with the big house. They have all this.
Never been there.
Well, it's definitely. I would definitely have it at in the top 5, but I think part of it is interchangeable. Who you want to see?
But I think news. My point is, this is a sensational story because the nature of the story. It's become sensational. That's if he had been fired without cause, it would be part of the rundown of these shows, but it would not be the type of attention that it's getting now. We didn't talk about it in the first
but people
hour
love
because
drama. We know this. That's why reality TV is
crazy.
The biggest thing in the world, is because people love drama. And if we continue on with the drama stuff, we can bring it over to a school that you just named, and that's Notre Dame. Because I've been sitting on this for a few days now, just been waiting to talk about Notre Dame and just how ridiculous it is what the AD is doing and what the school is doing. Like, enough is enough. Because I saw this report yesterday that there was a writer who wrote a book, and he was supposed to have his signing on campus, and because he's part of the playoff committee, the school canceled it. And then because of the backlash, the school brought it back and said, no.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, no. He's allowed to come. I just don't understand it. And the thing that I don't understand the most is this war that the AD has going on, where nobody on the football team has come out and really said anything. You don't see Marcus Freeman in front of cameras, crying about not being in the college football playoff. You just see these guys getting back to work. But now the AD wants to go to war with the ACC. You have Brett Yormark in the Big 12 coming out and defending Jim Phillips, who's the ACC commissioner. It just became this total mess. And it was like, okay, we got it. You guys are upset. You were left out of the tournament. I agree. Don't play in a bowl game because bowl games they're useless. Who cares about bowl games? But it's just like, enough is enough. Enough. We had your one day, right? You went on the Dan Patrick show, I think it was, and you complained about it.
Was.
That's all we needed. We didn't need a press conference for us to see how upset you were. You know, if you were going to do a press conference, come out stronger and say, hey, we found some language in the contracts and we're leaving the ACC. They didn't want to treat us right. We're gone. But they didn't do that. And it's crazy.
Let me take what you said in pieces. Let me go back. Is West Virginia in a bowl game this year?
Mm-mm.
When they're in a bowl game, do you watch it?
If it's on TV, yeah, sometimes.
They're all
but
on TV. But the bowl games are meaningless, and this is a real debate that's happening right now. Is people thinking are bowl games finished now? That it's all just about the college football playoff, and then every other bowl game is the NI frickin' T, where nobody wants to play and be a part of it. And the whole reason why this became so crazy is Notre Dame said no to a bowl game, along with 6 or 7 other programs who did not want to play a bowl game when they were not part of the CFP. But the reason is the bowl game schedule is such that it's very costly for schools to have their teams. It's no longer the profit center it used to be because there's such a time difference between end of season and bowl games where you have to keep practicing, and it goes into the number of days that your organization can practice. So there's a lot of reasons why programs are not as excited anymore because the juice is not worth the squeeze. And in terms of Notre Dame crying the way they have, which is just funny to watch, the reason why I had a problem with it, I get the AD's job is to advocate on behalf of its team and its school. So Bavacqua going on the Dan Patrick show to say that he was upset, that it was not proper, I get that because nothing changed between Miami and Notre Dame because they each didn't play a conference championship weekend. So why did they switch in the rankings? And the reason given is that Miami and Notre Dame had never been compared before. It was BYU and Miami. But once BYU was out of the question, then all of a sudden Miami changes and has to be compared to Notre Dame. That again sounded like total poppycock to me. And I was not offended the way people at Dan's show were, who were, going after Notre Dame for, all of their reactions, because I like advocating for stuff I want and stuff that I didn't get. When we don't get a call in baseball, we'll meet the press after and say the umps missed this call or baseball is trying to screw us. I really don't mind that. What I minded more is that they somehow were upset that the ACC may have been involved in politicking when they've known that from the start. Every school knows that conferences politic for their schools. That's what you're supposed to do because you get money as a conference. So them acting all surprised, like how could ACC do this to us? They've been doing that to you every single year, trying to get over you and every other team to get their teams in. That's the part that bothered me the most, Coca.
Yeah, and it doesn't. And there are all these people who are saying, "Oh, Notre Dame join a conference now." What do they need to join a conference for?
They don't.
When they have this new contract that if they're top 12, they're automatically in the playoffs starting next year. So now
and they have a separate TV deal.
Yeah, but now it becomes a little funny if they're 13th, right? If the playoff committee just puts them in at 13 and just sneaks them in there and just says, "Oh, this team was better than that." But the other thing is that, the two fan bases fighting, it's the committee, right? Notre Dame didn't do anything. Miami didn't do anything. Yes, they played on the field, but it wasn't like, Miami and the banner that was flying around on the airplane.
Head-to-head matters.
Yeah, it wasn't like that was what the committee saw, and they're like, you know what? That's it. That was it.
You know what Levitard said on the show yesterday? That this committee... that Notre Dame was upset that the ACC network replayed the Notre Dame-Miami game. And the reason Notre Dame was upset with ACC and ACC network is it was their view that there were committee members watching that game, reminding themselves, oh, Notre Dame couldn't run the ball against Miami's defense. We're going to choose Miami over Notre Dame. And it didn't occur to me to do that until I rewatched the game on ACC Network, which I was asked to do by the head of the committee. I found it to be funny. There was lobbying done by people on the Hurricane side for sure. There was lobbying done people on the Irish side for sure. But rewatching the game as a way to choose, That made me laugh.
Do you think any committee member could find the ACC network if they tried? Like outside of a post on Twitter where somebody said, "Look at this, look what the ACC is doing." Do you think one committee member would be able to find the ACC network to watch that? Because it's just like
skinny bundle, man.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. All right, but the last topic for today is the Oklahoma City Thunder, because we don't talk enough about just how good they are and the start that they've had to this season and what Sam Presti was able to do and what he was able to build, because this team is ridiculous. They're 24-1 right now. They're off to the semifinals of the Emirates NBA Cup. They have a young core of players that they've been able to sign with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, with Chet Holmgren, and then you're like, you know what? This has to be it, right? Like it has to be it. And then you look at their picks for next year in the draft, and they have 3 first-round picks, and one of them is the Clippers pick, which could be a top 3 pick. And you're just like,
awesome.
What happened here? You know, how did they get away with this? And it's like tanking finally gone right? Where Sam Presti was able to lose and the Thunder were able to lose, but they were able to find the greater fool who would, trade for the big names. And they got SGA, and he led them to a championship, and they have this solid core, and it's just, there's no end in sight of what could be another style of Warriors run, right? Where you're just drafting players because you made the right trade, and now it just continues, and you have this cycle of just greatness.
Well, you got to get it right. I would say that the Thunder did nothing different than what other teams do when they're trading superstars. They're trying to get back the best they can, and then they're trying to draft the best they can with the picks they get. It's just that not all teams get it right. So in baseball, when you tank and you get the number 1 pick in the draft, or you win the lottery like the White Sox, and they may not draft right. When you trade, the Marlins have always been accused of trading. We got accused. The worst trade ever, trading Miguel Cabrera for Cameron Maybin and Andrew Miller. Guess what? What if they had become SGA? And all of a sudden, they were the best players in baseball, and we won a World Series. We would have looked smart. So I give Presti all the flowers I can, but every team tries to do what he did. It just hasn't worked as well. The Thunder were good with Durant and Harden and Westbrook. I think I'm almost positive they went to the finals as an organization.
They lost the Heat.
So that's recently. That's in the last 20 years. I would assume it's even closer.
But they also had a big stretch of losing, and they did have a season where Russell Westbrook won the MVP. But it was always the thing, right, that they were never able to win that championship when they came over from Seattle, because there was a lot of it left a lot of a bad taste in people's mouths when they left Seattle and they went to Oklahoma City. But they were finally able to do it, and Sam Presti looks like a genius, and he continues to look like a genius, because he's able to sign these players and have this core and still have these draft picks. Because next year,
people can name 5 members of the Thunder. A team that's 24-1. When the Bulls and when the Warriors were that good, people could name 5 Warriors. It was quite simple to do. Lakers, dynasties, you can generally name players. Isn't it interesting that when you ask people, can you name 5 players on the Thunder? And I've done this a little bit, Coca, so I'm setting you up here. People are like, yeah, SGA. There's 2 Williamses.
Well, that's the easy thing, is that you can just say Jalen Williams and you get 2.
You get credit.
Right?
You get double
credit. You get credit for 2.
Williams. Yeah. And then you say, like, yeah, the big lanky white guy. Yeah, no, not the lead singer from ELO. Yes, that's Chet Holmgren. So that's a good one. Anyone else? Yeah. And this team is 24-1. But they've got 3 draft picks next year, and you mentioned this. He's got to hit it. What if he drafts 3 dogs? Is he still a genius? Is the dynasty still a guarantee?
Yeah, because of how young the team is. That's the difference. Is that this core is all, under 30 years old. So
it is amazing.
So realistically, they could be together for a while. They can use that draft pick and trade it, right? They don't need to use all 3 draft picks. They can trade it and get future picks. They can continue to do this and set themselves up So it was just a tremendous job by Sam Presti. And like you said, it is just funny that like the Warriors team, right? You knew everybody, the Bulls team, the Heat team, all these teams, the Celtics, even when the Celtics, won a few years ago, you were still able to name every single player. And that just goes to show the city, right? Because it is Oklahoma City. Do you feel as if it's different that it is just
I love
Oklahoma City?
Have you ever been there?
Never been.
It's awesome, by the way. Side note, don't they have to win the title before? I call them on Twitter a dynasty, and I realized that I made a mistake because they've only won one title. They're not.
Yeah.
They can't be. Even if they break the record this year, which is the Warriors at 73-9, which they're on schedule right now to win 79 games. To go 79-3 is their current track. But if they do that, the Warriors went 73-9 and didn't even win the title. They lost to the Cavs that year in 7 games. They were up 3-1, and then LeBron and Ty Lue came back to win 3 in a row with Kyrie Irving. So they got to win the title. That'll be back-to-back. Is that a dynasty? I think we've agreed it's not. You got to win at least 3 titles in 5 years. Isn't that our rule? That's the special Coca Samson dynasty rule.
Yeah.
Like the Dodgers are the dynasty. They won in 20 and 24 and 25. So they're done. They're a dynasty. We agreed the Astros were when they got their 3rd ring in 22. So I think the Thunder are 2 titles away. So they're actually not even close to a dynasty.
All right, we have a few minutes. We have a few minutes left, and I have to get a take off. Like I need to just end this week with a take.
Please.
I went to a pizzeria, or it should be called a restaurant, last week, and it was one of these ones where it's like you need to eat here. You have to eat here before you die. It's one of the best pizza places in the world. It's called Raza in Jersey City.
Okay.
They're Neapolitan pizzas. And I just don't think that Neapolitan pizzas are worth it. Because I'm not spending $30 on a little tiny personal pan thing, and they're going to tell you, oh, we use these great ingredients, and we have this, and we have that. It's not worth it, people. Just go to a mom and pop place. They're going to have just as good pizza there. And that's why these Michelin star restaurants, I've never been to one, but I see what they look like. But I'd rather go to a mom and pop place, pay $12 and get enough food that could feed a family of 4 for 2 days. Do that. The experience to me, it wasn't worth it. I didn't think the pizza was that great at all. I thought there's way better pizza that is out there, and I just think that people don't listen to the critics. Be your own critic.
So you're the $7.99 all you can eat buffet guy? Like you
no,
like that?
No. I think there's just mom and pop places that that just cook better, that the food is better, the quality is better, and they're not these these chefs trying to ruin what is a great staple, right? It's pizza. I don't need a $30 pizza. I don't need it.
I would just ask you this: did you not know before you walked in the restaurant what the price was? Like, did you get the bill and say, "Oh my God, I didn't know this was a $30 pizza"? Because that's on you.
No, I think it's one of those things where listen, I'm not going to get into my personal life, but it's one of those things where you take one for the team, where you have to do these things. So it was one of those things. It was one of the things.
Was it worth it?
No, I'm saying it's not. I'm saying it wasn't worth it. I'm saying it wasn't worth it. The company was great. The company was excellent. But I'm just saying.
She's not listening. Trust me.
I'm just saying that the pizza was not worth it. I don't need crazy ingredients on my pizza. I just need pepperoni, right? I need a sausage pizza. Sometimes I'll go crazy and get a chicken, but the other stuff,
things we do for
unnecessary.
Love. Coke, a hell of a week. We'll do it again next week, starting Monday as we get close to the holidays. And thank you. Keep going, everybody. Have a safe weekend. See you on Monday. In the meantime, it's just business. This has been nothing personal.